everyone, and welcome to today's webinar brought to you from Marshall E-Learning and Ciphr. Today we're exploring how to create a menopause-friendly workplace. I'm Catherine, I'm Head of Content here at Ciphr, and I'm delighted to be joined by Anne Alcock, Head of Diversity at Marshall E-Learning, and Jo Fuller, founder of the Merry Menopause. Welcome, Jo and Anne, how are you today?
Good morning.
Hello everyone, very well, thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
I'm just going to take a quick look at the agenda before we get stuck in today. Jo's going to share the challenges facing employers and employees when it comes to the menopause and the cost of ignoring it, as well as her own personal story. We're going to discuss how to get your terminology right, what's the difference between menopause, perimenopause and postmenopause, among other terms, as well as discussing physical and psychological symptoms, our 5 steps to creating a menopause-friendly workplace, and Anne's also going to give us an overview of relevant e-learning courses and other services from Marshall's. At any time, if you have a question for Jo or Anne, please use the question panel on your screen to send it in, and we'll tackle all those in a Q&A right at the end. If you're watching live, this is being recorded and the recording will be emailed to you later today. There's no further action you need to take to receive that. Before I hand over to Jo, I just want to introduce you to Ciphr if you haven't come across us before. Ciphr is a leading UK provider of integrated HR recruitment, learning and payroll solutions, and we're trusted by more than 600 organisations across the UK. Today, we're not going to be diving into the specifics of our software and services in great detail. If you want to hear more about what we do, you can email us at info@ciphr.com. You can find us online at ciphr.com, or you can opt in using our exit survey at the end to find out more. And if you haven't come across Marshall E-Learning before, they've joined the Ciphr Group earlier this year, and Marshalls have been innovators in people development for more than 20 years. They are diversity and inclusion experts with that practice headed up by Anne, with exemplary client retention, with many partnerships spanning more than a decade. Marshalls offers a range of e-learning courses, which include topics about menopause, as well as diversity and inclusion consultancy services. If you want to find out more about Marshalls, again, you can find them online, or you can opt in at the end of this broadcast to find out more. Now that's all the sort of admin bit out of the way, I'm just going to hand over to Jo. So please bear with us as I transfer control to Jo. Just do the technology bit.
Thank you, Catherine. Let me just get how is that? Can everybody see my screen?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks, Jo. I'm going to disappear now, but I'll see you at the Q&A.
Okay. Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Jo Fuller. I'm founder of the Merry Menopause online community. I'm an accredited coach and I specialise in menopause and menstruation. I'm also the host of the Merry Menopause Book Club podcast, which was a finalist in the British Podcast Awards last year. So I'm very proud of that and I will keep mentioning it until she wins. So my mission is to raise awareness of menstruation and menopause to all ages and all genders, to remove the shame and the stigma, change the narrative and empower us to take control of our hormonal health. I support those going through menopause to develop a compassionate relationship with themselves, trust that they are not broken, and to see their menopause as an opportunity to evolve and to grow. Many of the symptoms are temporary and there are good times ahead. We just need to trust the process. And I help organisations to start conversations and introduce long-lasting and sustainable change that helps to reduce the high loss rate of valuable talent, improve retention and support the career progression of all those who menstruate. My work is a win-win for employee and employer. During my presentation today, I use the terms woman and woman, knowing that these issues are relevant and impact those who identify as trans or non-binary or who choose not to identify at all. My work is to educate and support all those experiencing hormonal changes and those that love them. I'm delighted to be partnering with Ciphr and Marshall's E-Learning to raise awareness of the impact of menopause at work, and hopefully this is the beginning or the continuation of a very important conversation for you and your organisations. So why is menopause a workplace issue? According to the NHS, it's estimated that there are currently around 13 million perimenopausal and menopausal women in the UK, equating to around 1/3 of the entire female population. The CIPD, the Chartered Institute of Personal Development, estimates that there are over 7 million women aged 40 to 60 in work in the UK, That is a huge pool of talent, and this means that there are millions of women experiencing varying stages of their menopausal transition. For 2/3 of these, the symptoms ranging from anxiety, depression, lack of confidence to uncomfortable, upsetting or overwhelming physical manifestations can negatively affect their working life. A Bupa report in May 2021 found that 900,000 women left their jobs as a result of menopausal symptoms, and many others resigned themselves to just coping. Many suffered in silence, fearful or too embarrassed to talk about how they were feeling, and as a result were often overlooked or didn't put themselves forward for promotions or advancement. Organisations need to do their very best to retain these experienced, talented women, and that requires education, understanding and support on both sides. Menopause shouldn't be taboo, and everyone should feel confident to have conversations about menopause, especially when they need guidance and support. Often a few simple changes to someone's working environment can make a world of difference. Just being able to talk openly in a safe culture can reduce the impact of someone's symptoms. Menopause should be handled sensitively. There is no one size fits all. Everyone will have a unique experience of their menopause transition, and symptoms can fluctuate and be felt to varying degrees depending on the individual. No one day is the same, and no two people's experience is the same. And we don't leave our symptoms at home. We don't walk out the door in the morning and say, "See you later, menopause. I'll be home about 6. I'll grab something for dinner." Our menopause comes to work with us. The following statistics are from the Fawcett Society's Menopause in the Workplace Report 2022, which was commissioned by the head of Channel 4, Alex Mahon, a huge champion of raising awareness of menopause at work. So did you know that 77% of women experience one or more symptoms they describe as very difficult? 44% said that their ability to work had been affected. 1 in 10 women who have been employed during menopause have left work due to their symptoms. 14% have reduced their hours, 14% gone part-time, and 8% didn't apply for a promotion. And that makes for depressing reading, especially when you consider that 79% of employers haven't shared information about menopause, 84% don't have menopause training for staff, 81% don't have menopause training for managers, and 79% don't have a support network in place. So thank you for showing up today and taking an interest in menopause for you and your organisation, and hopefully moving forward not being one of these statistics. We've seen a huge rise in mental health support in the workplace, but we need to start talking about women's hormonal health issues just as seriously and recognise the links between our mental and physical well-being and our menstrual cycle and our menopause. #HotResignation is a term being used to shine a light on the mass exodus of women from their jobs due to a lack of awareness and support for menopause at work. There is a significant misunderstanding and underestimation of the impact of menopause. For many, it coincides with the prime of their careers, making it a critical period for personal and professional growth. The impact of menopause knows no organisational hierarchy. From frontline workers to managers, leaders and CEOs, all are susceptible to its impact. The pressures of the workplace can amplify symptoms, highlighting the need for comprehensive support and that extends beyond physical comfort measures. While providing desk fans and cooling solutions is commendable, addressing mental health and psychological well-being becomes equally imperative. Loss of memory, brain fog, cognitive recall, the ability to focus and concentrate can all be debilitating, and these are issues that a desk fan is not going to solve. Being able to speak openly about how you are feeling and to feel supported when you can't remember a certain word, or a report is late, or you've had a terrible night's sleep, or you're experiencing anxiety, or you freeze whilst presenting with no idea of what you're saying or what comes next. The words just disappear. These are all common symptoms of menopause. And I'm passionate about addressing and encouraging a supportive and open dialogue around the psychological impacts of menopause because of my own experience. I've never had a hot flush. My symptoms were what we call invisible, and it took me years to recognise and link my low mood, anxiety and memory loss to a decline in hormones in my menopause transition. I've since learned to be open and transparent when I present and when I coach. I talk openly about the impact of brain fog and memory recall. And in return for my honesty and vulnerability, I've received support and understanding, and that has allowed me to grow my coaching business, even when I didn't feel capable, and to build genuine connections with others who feel able to share their own experience with me. And in full transparency, I have everything written down today, so I can deliver the best to you, because if it wasn't written down, we'd be here for ages while I try to remember it. So there are over 5 million women aged 50 to 64 working in the UK, which is more than double than it was 30 years ago. That's according to the Office of National Statistics. And women over 50 are the fastest growing workforce in the UK. We are working longer, and for many from our 40s onwards, our careers are on an upward trajectory. A recent study by Involved Diversity and Inclusion Consultancy concluded that the FTSE 100 won't reach CEO gender parity until 2076. Their founder, Suki Sandel, OBE, says that the FTSE 100 should be leading the way for all other businesses, ensuring women and men are represented equally at all levels. This might include deploying development programs designed specifically for women to support them into senior roles, or flexible working arrangements to fit around childcare or other responsibilities to ensure that they can remain at work and excel in their roles. Involved says that one immediate step that companies large and small can take is to implement robust menopause support policies to support the estimated 13 million women of menopause age at work in the UK. Given that the average age of a CEO is similar to that of a woman going through the menopause, supporting these women is one way to make it more likely to naturally progress into senior positions. So if you want to retain this invaluable pool of talent, expertise and experience, if you want to see more parity in senior leadership roles and more women in your C-suite, your organisation needs to know about menopause and menstruation, and your organisation needs to be talking about menopause and menstruation. And if we get this right and give women the best support through their menopause transition, they could go on to have the best and most fulfilling part of their career. It's not mandatory to have a menopause policy, but this year the UK government appointed its first menopause employment champion and urged employers to develop menopause policies and create more supportive environments to help women experiencing menopause to stay and progress in work. Employers who fail to support their menopausal employees or act punitively towards them leave themselves vulnerable to discrimination claims. They also risk their reputation, their ability to attract and retain talent, and their profitability. Under the Equality Act 2010, menopause discrimination is largely covered under 3 protected characteristics: age, sex, and disability. And the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974 provides for safe working, which extends to working conditions when experiencing menopausal symptoms. There have been several calls for further legislation requiring employers to put in place a workplace menopause policy to protect women going through menopause against discrimination whilst at work. Menopause and perimenopause are not specifically protected under the Equality Act 2010. However, if you are treated unfairly because of menopause or perimenopause, this may amount to discrimination because of your sex or disability or your age. Recent government data shows a rising trend in the number of employment tribunal cases in the UK that cite menopause as a contributing factor. According to His Majesty's Courts and Tribunal Service, in 2017 there were 5 cases, which increased to 6 in 2018 and 7 in 2019, with a significant jump in 2020 to 16 cases, and this further increased to 23 cases in 2021. Law firm Irwin Mitchell has analysed the latest government data and found that although there was a slight dip to 18 cases that cited menopause in 2022, within the first 6 months of 2023, 14 cases had already been recorded. Ongoing at the moment is the case of a 52-year-old social worker who has launched legal action against Leicester City Council for constructive dismissal, claiming it failed to make adjustments to allow her to continue to work. Her case is being backed by the Equality and Human Rights Commission, and she is stated to have had memory and concentration problems, dry eyes, mood swings, tiredness, anxiety, hot flushes and dizziness, but was told no specific support was available. The case continues. So I mentioned earlier about the difficulties I experienced during work, but on a more personal note, I just want to take you through my menopause journey. So I'm now 53, I'm 2 years post-menopause, that's 2 years without a period. But 10 years ago, when I was around 42, I started to notice changes to my mind and to my body. I started to experience brain fog, my mood dropped, my body started to ache, my skin became itchy, my sleep became disturbed, and I started to experience anxiety, something that I had never experienced before. I thought I was going mad, that I was seriously ill, and I was scared. Up to this point, I had never had a conversation about menopause, and I genuinely thought that it might be something that happened to me in my 50s, and if it did, it might be hot flushes. I had absolutely no idea. I had never spoken to my mum about menopause, and sadly, she passed away before I started this work and my menopause journey. And when I look back at our early relationship, it was fractious. There was me, a teenager, at the beginning of my hormonal life, in puberty, the start of my periods, with my hormones surging and spiking. And then there was my mum, who would have been about 47, 48 at the time, coming to the end of her hormonal journey in perimenopause, a reverse puberty, with her hormones surging and spiking. And I'm talking about the 80s here. It was a different time. But had we have had a conversation about hormones, periods, and menopause, it would have transformed our relationship, most definitely for the better. So at the age of 42, I started to do my research. I wanted answers. I wanted an explanation as to how I was feeling and what was happening. And I discovered the word perimenopause. And I realized that my menopause had started way before my periods had stopped. And that's why I started the Merry Menopause, as a homage to my mum and the generations of women before her who didn't have this conversation, many of which suffered in silence, for the women of my generation who knew nothing and were thrown in at the deep end, and for the younger women coming up behind us to prepare them and not to scare them. Everyone who menstruates will experience menopause. That's 51% of the world's population. And the other 49% will pretty much experience it by proxy, which is why this needs to be an inclusive and open conversation. Menopause is not a choice. It is not an illness, and it cannot be cured. It is a natural hormonal recalibration that everyone who menstruates will experience. So what is menopause? Menopause is when we don't have enough eggs left in our ovaries to ovulate. It's the end of our reproductive years, the end of our periods. Officially, menopause is defined as just one day, the very last day of our last period, and the average age of that day is roughly around the age of 51. But reaching this point is a gradual process that can take a number of years. Menopause is the destination in a long journey that started with our first bleed. We have our fertile years, when we start our periods, the beginning of our menstrual cycle, and we start to experience monthly hormonal highs and lows. And the hormones responsible for this are the sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. Estrogen helps to control the menstrual cycle. It supports bone health, it improves muscle mass and strength, it protects our heart, it supports our brain function, and it helps to regulate our mood. Progesterone is the calming hormone. It helps to keep estrogen in check. It helps to regulate the menstrual cycle, and it prepares us for pregnancy. And if that doesn't happen, it's our progesterone that triggers a bleed. Before menopause, we produce 3 times as much testosterone as we do estrogen. And it promotes strong bones and muscles. It helps us to feel energized. It plays a role in our libido, and it helps with our brain and cognitive function. And as one hormone takes over from the other during our monthly cycle, we experience regular hormonal changes. And as they decline and deplete as we age, we then start to experience symptoms of the perimenopause. So this describes the time leading up to menopause, which can last for several years and for many can be the most symptomatic. Perimenopause can start from our mid-30s onwards as our ovarian function starts to wane. During this time, our hormone levels start to change dramatically, and over time, we stop having a regular cycle. Our egg supply is depleting and making pregnancy less likely, but not impossible. Our estrogen, our progesterone and our testosterone levels decline. This leads to irregular cycles, and we can start to skip cycles going for more than 60 days without a period. Periods can increase in duration and blood flow can get lighter or heavier. There will be noticeable changes to your periods. Hormones at this time are fluctuating to extremes, and this is what leads to many of the symptoms of perimenopause. And then we have postmenopause. So this is the point or the day 12 months after our last period, and it marks the official end of our natural reproductive life. For most of us, menopause symptoms typically last for around 4 years after the end of menstruation, but for some, a very small amount, around 10%, symptoms can continue for up to 12 years. And if menopause, that very last day of our last period, occurs under the age of 45, it's known as early menopause. And when menopause occurs under the age of 40, it's usually referred to as premature ovarian insufficiency, or POI. Certain circumstances can trigger an early menopause or POI, and these include surgery involving ovaries or certain types of chemotherapy drugs and radiotherapy, all of which can have a damaging effect on the ovaries. So according to NICE, the National Institute for Healthcare and Excellence, there are 48 symptoms of perimenopause and menopause, and they are a mix of physical and psychological symptoms. 80% of women will experience symptoms, and on average between 5 and 7 symptoms each. So let's break them down. So we have the cognitive, the psychological symptoms, that anxiety, brain fog, low mood, depression, mood swings and irritability. These are the most common symptoms, and they tend to come on earliest and can have a big impact on our mental well-being. They're often ignored or brushed aside or misdiagnosed and mistreated. Many are put on antidepressants at this time because these symptoms are not linked to perimenopause and hormonal changes. We then have the vasomotor symptoms. These hormonal fluctuations can affect the temperature controlling center of the brain, and this leads to an exaggerated response by the blood vessels. These symptoms are caused by the dilation and constriction of those blood vessels, and that manifests as hot flushes and night sweats. Falling estrogen levels affect the lining of the uterus, the vagina and the bladder, causing tissues to thin and become less elastic and more sensitive. Vaginal dryness is one of the most common menopause symptoms. It can make sex painful and uncomfortable, and this can have a knock-on effect to our libido and our sexual relationships. As the pelvic floor weakens, we can become more susceptible to incontinence, that real urgency to go to the toilet. And if you or anyone else you know is experiencing urinary tract infections, UTIs, and getting repeat prescriptions for antibiotics, you or they need to have a different conversation with your healthcare practitioner. Estrogen is key for muscles and bones, and its decline impacts our musculoskeletal health. This can lead to achy joints and muscles, and this natural decline in bone density can then go on to become osteoporosis. The drop in estrogen leads to a decline in collagen, which can mean that skin becomes drier and less elastic, and also affects the condition of our skin, our hair and our nails. And these changes can make the skin more sensitive to products such as soaps and detergents, which can irritate the skin and cause itching. And hormonal changes impact our digestion and our gut health, making us more susceptible to bloating and can bring on allergies, many of which start in our gut. So you may find you become more sensitive to foods that you've always been able to tolerate, that have always been part of your diet, such as red meat, or you developed allergies such as hay fever, which is very common in midlife. And some of the other more common symptoms, we've got difficulty sleeping, fatigue, a drop in our libido, heavy periods, anxiety driving, noise sensitivity, tinnitus, twitching legs, dizziness, rage, foot pain, a tingling in our extremities, body odour, sore breasts, acne, hair loss, dry eyes, headaches and migraines, issues with our teeth and our gums, and heart palpitations. But please, not everything is down to menopause. So if you have any concerns about your health, please seek advice. But just be aware that a lot of these symptoms are linked to that hormonal recalibration. Many symptoms are temporary, and as we've learned, menopause is a sequence of events that happens over a number of years. And you've probably heard horror stories in the media and from people you know, but your actual experience will depend on lots of factors. If you do suffer strong symptoms, it's due to a combination of genetics, your general state of health, and the state of your periods before perimenopause, which is why menstrual education is so important. I won't touch on that now in this presentation today, but I do in my full menopause awareness session, and also in my session specifically about periods called Your Period is Your Superpower, which I truly believe it is. Our periods and our perimenopause are a barometer of health, and they can reveal and amplify underlying health issues. For example, if you're stressed and not sleeping well, the perimenopause recalibration of your brain could make sleep almost impossible. So many of the symptoms we experience are our mind and our body talking to us, asking us to pay attention to what they're telling us, to start looking at our stress, our lifestyle, our relationship, and our working life. And with the right support and knowledge, menopause is a gift. We are being shown the areas of our lives that we need to pay attention to, the areas where we need to take positive action so we can lay the foundations for a happy and healthy life post-menopause, so we can age well. And who doesn't want that? Hands up. So we've learned that menopause is a big change, both mentally and physically. So how do you make sure that all those going through their menopause transition still feel as if they belong to your organisation and that you care? As a business, are you clear on how your menopause awareness and support aligns with your strategic objectives? At a time when staff retention is key, creating a culture where women feel they can raise health concerns is a good move for employers. People are making decisions on where they work, not just on salary, but also the way they'll be looked after. It should be the culture and infrastructure of an organisation that changes, not the people. It takes more than warm words to ensure meaningful support for women's health in the workplace. Policies and awareness sessions are a great starting point, but it's only a fraction of what companies need to do. So are you just ticking a box? So here are 5 suggestions that you can use to create a menopause-friendly workplace. Step 1, create a specific menopause policy and action plan. There is no one-size-fits-all approach to developing a specific policy and guidelines. A tailored approach is needed. Your policy should be guidance for your line managers and your people and offer practical support. The policy should be easily accessible and signposted. Nobody should scrabble around to find it. It needs to be clear and about what support that you have available. Short-term absence can trigger performance reviews or disciplinary action. Does your menopause policy address menopause-related absence? If possible, include this in your policy, make it fair and flexible so you don't unfairly penalise someone experiencing ongoing symptoms. Your menopause policy should sit alongside your other policies, and it should be standalone and not melded or sidelined into another. It should be updated regularly with learnings and feedback from managers and employees, and ideally these updates should be communicated throughout the business so everyone is aware. And if you need a starting point to create a policy, please get in touch with me and I can signpost you to a basic policy that you can adapt. Flexible working has clear benefits for many employees and can be a great provision for managing menopause symptoms at work. A key part of building a framework is having a strong and supportive culture around flexible working. The CIPD research around this found that for many who were symptomatic, reduced hours, working from home, flexibility around start and finish time, and the choice of last-minute late starts after sleep disturbances were of real benefit. Sleep disruption at this time can be a big problem. So just getting out of the house in the morning and getting to work can cause much anxiety. Being able to start earlier or later and finish accordingly is helpful, as well as being able to call in and say you'll be working from home. Many find that if they're tired, it's hard to concentrate in an office environment, whereas at home they're less distracted and more productive, better able to focus, and also simple things like being able to adjust the temperature of the room. Working from home can also mean that individuals can manage more sensitive and personal symptoms such as heavy bleeding in private. They can take a shower, clean themselves up, change their clothes. They don't have to be concerned about staining office chairs or walking around the office if they're bleeding heavily, pretending that everything is okay. Keeping a smile on your face when you feel terrible or upset is not okay. and has a big impact on well-being. So flexibility with hours and working from home has many benefits, as does a culture where it's okay to express honestly how you're feeling with your team and your managers. There are different types of flexible working that you can consider: part-time working, a 4-day week, hybrid working, annualized hours, compressed hours, job sharing, flexible starts and finishes, and home or mobile working, careers and breaks. Not everyone will be able to benefit from the same type of flexibility, so it's important to have options to support employees who might not be able to work from home, and that you offer a variety of opportunities across roles, such as split shifts or job share, flexibility in start and finish times, and flexibility in scheduling shifts. So if you can, make flexible working a key part of your menopause support framework, and make sure people are aware of your policy and know how they can request it. Advertise roles as flexible and include flexible working in promotion opportunities to help with female progression. Put inclusion and fairness at the heart of your flexible working strategies. Do your flexible workers have access to the same training, development and promotion opportunities as those who work less flexibly? It's important to think about your flexible working and working from home policy. Both of these can facilitate a longer working life and provide freedom and autonomy to manage menopausal symptoms. How can you create a menopause-friendly workplace, an environment for safe conversations? How can you remove stigma and gendered ageism? By providing information that breaks down taboos. Education for all employees, regardless of gender, is essential so everyone gets a greater understanding of menopause and its impact. And ideally, it should start from the top down with a senior leader of any gender championing the support. Train your line managers. They're going to be a crucial part of fostering a supportive culture and making members of their team, making sure their members of their team are practically supported. In my line manager awareness sessions, I educate them on all aspects of menopause, the symptoms, and how to have sensitive conversations. And you need to equip them so they know where your policy is and what support is available to them and their teams. 30% of the women surveyed by the CIPD said that they were unable to go to work because of their menopause symptoms, but only a quarter felt able to tell their line manager the real reason for their absence. So think about how you can build trust between your managers and their teams, and start your education early. One of the most empowering steps a woman in her 30s can take is to educate herself on the stages and symptoms of menopause. When I think back to my 30-year-old self, menopause was the last thing on my mind, but I had dreadful periods. I wish now that someone had told me that the wobbles in my mental and physical health could be linked to my menstrual cycle and my hormones, and had educated me on the importance of being prepared and not scared for the inevitability of my menopause. When it comes to menopause, developing a safe space for colleagues to talk, seek support and advice for how they are feeling and what they are experiencing can be incredibly beneficial. Whether that's with other colleagues or on an internal chat group or regular in-person meetups, knowing that you are not alone and sharing the lived experience can be a great comfort. And taking that support network to the next level by introducing external, individual or group coaching with specialised coaches such as myself can really help to create a bond, build community and strengthen that network. Offering professional facilitation for group meetups can add a huge value in a limited time and really show your employees that you are not just ticking a box, that you are invested in their well-being and that you really care. Just because you have a colleague going through menopause doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to have a tough time, and it certainly doesn't mean that they are unable to do their job. People want to feel that they are trusted to manage their work alongside their menopause without the fear of being disciplined or facing consequences for being open about how they're feeling or for having to take time off. That's why it's so important to involve all employees and managers in education and conversations. Menopause can also impact trans and non-binary employees, and this highlights the importance of using inclusive language so no one feels sidelined and that they know how to access any support they might need and feel safe for asking it. And I'm currently in the process of developing a trans menopause awareness session along with Imperial College London, and that's going to be available for everyone towards the end of the year. More working women are talking about the menopause and how it affects them. Having a senior leader talk about how they managed or are managing their menopause at work helps others to feel heard. Getting a senior leader's buy-in can again be crucial, but choose that person wisely. They need to be passionate and invested, someone who wants to support a culture of open and honest conversation, support, coaching and mentoring. An inclusive culture removes the stigma and taboo around menopause and no longer makes it acceptable for jokes or workplace banter. There are persistent biases around gender and age, and organisations lose this talent pool at their peril. It's not what people can provide just by virtue of their bodies, it's about wealth of experience and resilience. For many at this menopausal stage of their lives, they've been through and are coming out the other side of parental care and responsibility. They're ambitious and want to progress, and they will make huge productivity gains in your workplace. Bias means that you will miss out. Embracing menopause as an organisation will help to lower sickness, reduce absence, encourage healthier and happier employees, make employees feel valued, committed and less likely to leave. It improves retention. It will also help to raise broader awareness of the advantages of later working life. Women's bodies at work, endometriosis, menstruation, PCOS, pregnancy, terminations and miscarriage. And not forgetting that supporting all those going through menopause is the right thing to do. When you encourage open and honest communication and you build trust and inclusivity, you help to get rid of shame, bias and misinformation. So the 5 steps that I've just talked about will benefit everyone, menopausal or not. They help to create a better place to work. And on a corporate level, it's about creating a working environment where menopause and menstruation are normalised and you and your colleagues talk comfortably, openly and positively about periods, perimenopause, menopause, ageing and moving forward into a new phase of life post-menopause. And on a personal level, think about the people in your life, your partner, your mother, your sister, your friends, and hopefully you can use your knowledge and skills from today to support not just your colleagues, but the people in your life that you love, so they can all have a merry and not a miserable menopause. So thank you so much for listening to me today. Please do stay connected. If you scan that little QR code at the bottom, that will take you directly to my website. But you can email me, jo@themerrymenopause.com, find me on LinkedIn, Jo Fuller, on Instagram @themerrymenopause. Work with me, education and awareness sessions, mentoring, one-to-one coaching, group coaching, facilitation. And of course, you can listen to my almost award-winning podcast where I interview the authors of the books writing about midlife, so a mix of fiction and non-fiction. So thank you so much, and I think we will now take it to Q&A.
Oh, thanks, Jo. I'm just gonna bring Anne in for a minute, and she's gonna tell us a little bit about Marshall's e-learning content. Not to worry, I need to just sort the technology out. Hi, Anne, welcome back. Jo, take a breather.
Hi.
That was great. I feel like we've learned a lot, and I have a lot to digest, metaphorically speaking. So, Anne, you're going to tell us a little bit about e-learning and training support from Marshall's.
Yeah, absolutely. Just first of all, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Jo. Extremely informative, helpful, interesting information and session. You've certainly given me a lot of food for thought. You know, it always strikes me there's so much more to learn and know about menopause. You know, you never know it all, even when you've experienced it yourself, obviously, and how it impacts every individual very, very differently. I think, you know, couple of things that just struck me from what you said is the extent of the symptoms or the potential symptoms of menopause. You know, when you've got on your screen that whole long list of things that could be happening to people who are personally experiencing menopause or different stages of menopause, it's quite an eye-opener really to think that's going on and the impact that can have for people in organisations, you know, in the workplace, affects so many people. And indeed, you know, how everybody probably is affected by menopause in some way, if not in their personal lives, in the workplace as well. So thank you so much. So before we move on to Q&A, I just wanted to touch briefly on how Marshalls and Ciphr can support organisations with training and consultancy on menopause. So I'm going to mention our e-learning, I'm going to mention facilitated training, and I'm going to mention our consultancy support. So really the second two of those elements there, which really is about Jo, basically. We're really fortunate to work with Jo as a Marshalls associate. So we've seen today the depth of her knowledge, of her expertise, and just wanted to assert what she said, what she can offer, and how she can work with your organisation, either by through tailored education sessions to different employee groups, different learner groups, with relevant objectives and appropriate content. And Jo also spoke in some detail about ways to create a menopause-friendly workplace. And there are obviously a whole range of options here for consultancy support in terms of bespoke advice to fit your organisational context. So, you know, if you think your challenges are around starting to write that policy, what would it include, how you can communicate it, how can you engage line managers, how can you increase that comfort and confidence in having conversations about menopause with team members. Or it might be around how different groups of staff working in different organisational workplace contexts, which can, you know, be extremely varied. You know, what does support actually look like? What does practical support look like in those different workplace situations and scenarios? So there are a whole range of ways in which you know, bespoke advice and consultancy can be offered. So do get in touch with us if you would like to talk more about that. Okay, Catherine, if I could just have the next slide then, please.
Yeah, just before we move on, Anne, I just wanted to flag, as some of you have already seen it on the screen, if you want to have a free trial of our menopause course, just type please type free into the question panel. Some of you have spotted that already, and if you do want to make a free trial, just type free and somebody will get back to you after the webinar and arrange that for you. Sorry, Anne, to interrupt your flow.
That's great. Okay, no, that was perfect. Seamless introduction to the first option. So I'm going to talk more specifically about e-learning now. So at Marshalls, we create e-learning on a whole range of diversity and inclusion topics, of which, you know, menopause can be seen to fall within that broad agenda. And we have two options on e-learning modules that we can offer. So firstly, we have an in-depth module. We create, back in 2021, we conducted some our own research. We did an employee survey, the focus of which was, you know, what stops people talking about menopause in the workplace. And that gave us a framework, you know, the results, the findings helped us to frame the content of the more in-depth module that we have available. So it's a very comprehensive course. It takes a very inclusive approach, and Jo's mentioned already the importance of being inclusive around this agenda, which is really, really important. Also, you know, hopefully aims to break down taboos and get people thinking and talking about menopause. So it's I suppose directed or targeted at very different groups of learners, but in a very comprehensive way for your organisation. So it's for anyone interested in menopause from a personal perspective. It's for leaders, it's for line managers, and so it goes into, in some detail, the implications of menopause for individuals and teams, and how leaders and line managers can actually approach that and give, you know, confidence and build awareness. It's for policy developers, and indeed it's for all staff to increase that understanding and awareness of the topic. So there's something in it for everyone, really. It contains elements of research, it contains educational information, it contains advice and guidance, and it's a very inclusive and engaging module in the way in which it also provides case studies, lived experiences, and also interactive elements for learners, you know, to actually participate in the module. So we also worked with the Greater London Authority on the content of the module, which was super helpful. We worked in particular with their gender network, and through that contact and that partnership, we were able to capture some lived experience, you know, which are very diverse and very different range of experiences that we hope really bring the course to life. And what we've got on the screen at the moment is just one little screenshot from the module, giving an example of somebody who shared their personal experience of menopause, which is included in the course. Okay, so the next slide, please. So the other option is a much shorter module. So again, this is e-learning, but it's a micro-learning course, and it is 10 to maximum 15 minutes. And it's really an introduction to menopause with a focus on the workplace. And something a little bit different about this module is that it's presenter-led. So I'm going to show you very quickly in a moment a really short clip. We've created and developed a couple of suites of e-learning in the recent past, which are these shorter modules, and they are led and introduced by a presenter. So it's quite an unusual format, but we found it's been very effective to really engage staff with topics, to give an introduction, and it's a very accessible way to present information. So you have the presenter coming on for a minute and a half, talking about a specific aspect of this particular topic, and then the rest of the module will be interspersed with more content and activities for the learner. So I'm just going to play you a really short clip just to give you a little example from our menopause micro learning course. So play that clip, Catherine, please, that'd be great. Oh, that we haven't got the sound.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Wondering whether that was a setting that okay, we don't worry now. I think you get the idea.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, Anne. I think it's because it's playing on my machine and then the sound is outputting through my headphones and it's not being picked up with the mic. It's maybe not playing as we want. So
okay.
We can include the clip of this with the recording that we send out later today. So apologies about that. We should have tested it. We didn't. That's on us. Let's move on to the next slide. And I'll have a little recap for you guys.
Yeah. So I'll just finish up of Catherine. So that was basically all I wanted to say, and I'm sorry we weren't able to show you, but you get the idea. You have a presenter, and then different parts of the course come in with activities and more content, and the presenter comes in at different points during the module. Okay, so just to finish off there, so a big thank you to Jo. Do get in touch with us if you would like to see our e-learning, the options there, but you know there are other options available in terms of facilitated training and wider consultancy as well. So I think I'm going to pass back to Catherine now, who's just going to give a bit of a recap on what we've done so far in the session. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Anne. I'll keep this recap short and sweet because we've got a flood of questions come in as I anticipated. So Jo took us through the scale of the the challenge facing people and their employers. There are nearly 13 million perimenopausal and menopausal people in the UK, and nearly 1 million people have left their jobs because of menopausal symptoms. 80% of women will experience symptoms associated with menopause, and these can include cognitive, psychological symptoms as well as physical symptoms. And Jo took us through like a whole gamut of symptoms that people can experience. Steps to creating a menopause-friendly workplace include creating a policy, greater education, and building an inclusive culture, and ideally multiple strands to your menopause policy and inclusion efforts. And as we've seen, Anne took us through the range of consultancy and e-learning services that Marshall offers. And again, just to reiterate, if you did want a trial of the menopause course that we offer, just type 3 into the questions panel and we will arrange that for you. So it's time to dive into the questions. We've had quite a few for you, Jo and Anne, and I realise we have 10 minutes left on the clock. So succinct answers as best we can, although I realise that the questions are quite broad, so let's do our best here. And I'll keep them all anonymous just in case any of you didn't want your name shared on this call. First question, say if you wanted to create a women's health group at work covering conditions such as PCOS, endometriosis, menopause and periods, for example, how could you name that group to be more inclusive of trans and non-binary employees? It's quite a tricky one to start you off with, sorry. Jo, are you muted? I can't hear you, sorry.
Oh my God, rookie mistake. I am muted. There we go. My suggestion to that would be ask everyone. So we want to put this group together. We want to make it inclusive. What suggestions have you got for a name? And you'll be amazed at the feedback you get from that.
Okay. It could be a name that's completely not health related. It could be
something
more
that resonates. But
yeah.
It's a lovely way to sort of advertise that you're putting the group together, bring people, you know, raise awareness, run a competition for it. You know, I don't know. Get everyone's input into it. But brilliant, well done, good luck with that. Fantastic idea.
Next question, if you have a full hysterectomy and therefore surgically induced menopause, are you still considered in menopause or post-menopause?
Repeat the question, Catherine.
If someone was to have a full hysterectomy and therefore enter surgically induced menopause, would you still be considered as menopausal or post-menopausal?
Well, you'd be post-menopausal because your menopause, yeah. So I am now going to spend the rest of my life in post-menopause. You know, that's how it's medically defined, you know, but menopause isn't an illness. You know, it's pathologized an awful lot in the media and on social media. It's not an illness. There's nothing wrong with it. And, you know, the words given to this stage of life are medical. So the medical term for a life a year after your periods have stopped is post-menopause.
Okay, thank you. Next question. One of the main blockers for managers I find is fear of making mistakes by using clumsy language, and this creates an error of avoidance. Do you have any tips on how to approach those conversations that we can include in training? And do you want to try that one, maybe? Sorry, Jo.
Yeah, sorry, I get very enthusiastic
about it. No, absolutely. I think that, you know, just thinking back to the research we did in 2021, you know, and absolutely, I think there is a fear among managers of saying the wrong thing. You know, they maybe, you know, have the best intentions and they would love to have conversations and feel really, you know that they need to and want to support. But there's always that kind of treading on eggshells, people feeling uncomfortable or not fully confident around the language. I was going to say surprisingly, but maybe it's not surprisingly, but there was also what we found in our research is the reluctance of people who wanted to talk about menopause in talking about menopause because they thought they were going to embarrass their line manager. So whereas actually the line managers were saying, we're not embarrassed, we just need more awareness and understanding of how to actually vocalize this and what to actually say in the terminology to use. So I think, I mean, you know, I'm not sure if this answers your question, but maybe just understanding that there is sort of discomfort on both sides or on all parts, if you like, and that affects the the fact of having a conversation or the opportunities to have those conversations. So I think if you can bring that kind of reality to life, it's not that often not that people don't want to talk about this, it's that people just are uncomfortable for whatever reasons about talking about it. And that might be from the person experiencing menopause or wanting to talk about it, and from the person, the line manager, wanting to support. So it's kind of like we're all in the same place, and let's just open up that conversation, recognise that, and then hopefully it might be easier to start talking. Yeah. And if you want to add to that, Joe.
Oh, I was just going to add, we've seen it in ourselves internally this morning. Our people team flagged that this webinar was happening on our Ciphr Engage platform and said we're celebrating World Menopause Day is tomorrow, that's Wednesday, and the following day we're going to have an internal chat about menopause with some members of staff, and loads of people have just popped on the comment saying, I love this, I recommend this book, I want to be involved in it, and it's just starting. It's almost the first hurdle, and giving it a go, and that's what we've just seen this morning. Good. Joe, anything to add on that front?
Just be sensitive around it. It can be, don't assume that somebody's menopausal. So a lot of that, when I run a line manager session, it's very much about how to have sensitive conversations, how to manage absence, how to start that conversation. So it is, you need to be, you don't want to walk on eggshells. Like Anne said, everybody needs to be transparent and go, this is new to me, I don't know how we do it, let's do it together. I want to help you, not offend you. And so it's about, assistance rather than resistance, but that's got to come, it's not just that, it's got to come from the whole organisation's got to be behind it, really.
Yeah, fantastic. And the flip side of that question, actually, we've had someone else ask, how do you think we can change male management attitudes to menopausal women to stop silly comments like, I have one like you at home, and just general lack of support attitude and dismissive about how it really affects women?
Educate them.
Yeah, I think it is that it's the people at the top of the organisation, as with all these things, isn't it? Saying that actually, we don't expect our managers to behave in that way or make comments that are completely inappropriate. Just because it doesn't create a culture where people do their best work. And underlying this, as Joe has mentioned already, there's a very significant business case. We don't want to be taken to tribunal, and we don't want to lose valuable staff because they get so fed up with inappropriate behaviour. So I think it's about understanding those business drivers, but also just saying, hopefully within the values of your organisation, this isn't appropriate anyway, let alone whether there's a business case or not. It's just, we shouldn't be talking to people and about people in an inappropriate and offensive way. So but that's got to come, as Joe mentioned before, it's got to come from those signals, and that role modelling has to come from the top of the organisation as well. Otherwise you normalise the bad behaviour if nobody challenges it.
And touching on that legal aspect, there was a case reported on People Management just last week about a woman being very successful at tribunal, challenging comments which are quite like the ones that you've just sent in, and being awarded a very reasonable sum, actually. So the evidence is out there that is not acceptable language and is a risk for your organisation, whether that applies to menopausal women or to anybody else in the workplace. Kind of discriminatory language. So best of luck with that one, is I think all I can say.
But we can help you with that, if that's
definitely
something that is in your organisation that needs to be, not outed, but needs to be dealt with in a sensitive and adult fashion. That is something we can help you with, because it shouldn't continue.
Yeah, awesome. A comment actually from someone in the audience said, get the men involved and include them in conversations.
Yeah,
our company has put a business case to address menopause and post-menopause. They've actually sort of formalised that, so that's brilliant work. Well done.
Brilliant.
Another question: how do you know if you're post-menopause or if you're on HRT and contraception?
So if you've gone from contraception to HRT, you won't know if your periods have finished. So that's the way we know, is when we when our periods finish. So there's no way of knowing if you've just been on contraception and go straight onto HRT. We can assume at a certain age, you know, but I have friends who are at 50. I've got a friend who's 59. She's still having a regular cycle. So there's no way of knowing until you. I started HRT this summer. I had been almost 2 years without having periods, so I knew that my periods stopped. I went to HRT because of my body pain, because of aches and pains. Before I went on to HRT, I kind of had all my ducks in line. I'd done everything that I could to manage this pain: anti-inflammatory diet, regular exercise, managing stress. But you know, it was still a symptom that I I needed help with. But I knew that I was postmenopause. So, as I say, if you go straight from contraception to HRT, you won't know. It's a guessing game. But I encourage you, in my main menopause awareness session, I do talk about hormonal contraception, not anti-hormonal contraception, but I do talk about hormonal contraception and how that's used just as a medication for so many underlying health conditions regarding our menstrual cycle. So it's a really important subject to understand why you're on hormonal contraception if you've been on it for a long term and you're not using it for pregnancy, to avoid pregnancy.
Thank you. I just wanted to flag to everyone on the line, we have come up to midday, which is our official end of this webinar. We've got a couple more questions, so if Joe and Anne, you can stay on for another 5 minutes, we'll just try and get through those as quickly as we can. If you can stay with us, that's great. If you can't, I totally understand that you might need to whiz off for another call or for lunch or for anything else. But if you are leaving us now, you should be served a survey just asking for a bit of feedback about today, and if you want more information, and if you can fill that in, that's really helpful for us. Thank you. My next question for you, Joe, what would be the advisable next step for an employer when an employee's perimenopause symptoms are so impactful that it is unsafe for them to continue their role, and when medical treatment and workplace adjustments have been unsuccessful?
Probably one-to-one support, coaching, because there will be underlying factors. You know, the majority of symptoms are exacerbated by stress. So you've got to think at midlife, an awful lot is thrown at us. We've got teenage kids, aging parents, work pressures, underlying health conditions or existing health conditions. So, you know, it all comes together along with this sort of hormonal recalibration, just goes boom. So, you know, that's why I specialise in what I do, is supporting midlife women through to unpick what's lifestyle, what's hormones, what's stress, what's relationships. So one-to-one support is probably the way forward with that employee, from which they'll probably hugely benefit. Just the realisation sometimes for some women of what's going on. Great question.
Thank you. Have you got any tips on menopause for those with PCOS or endometriosis? Yeah,
I would try and get to the root cause of what's causing the PCOS and the endometriosis. They're a hormonal imbalance. So you know, a lot of times we are given the pill or hormonal contraception just to control them, but there's normally something else that's happening underneath. So I would say, you know, as I said before, that our periods and our perimenopause are a barometer for our health. So if there's something going on, PCOS or endo, there is a hormone imbalance. That we're born with our hormones in balance, and our hormones become out of balance, you know, as we start living our lives. So it's about looking at what's causing that hormonal imbalance. A great woman to refer to, she has a podcast, she's got 2 books. There's a woman called Dr. Lara Briden, Briden. She's an amazing resource on any kind of hormonal imbalances. She's a great one to reference. But I would say get those sorted, because they're not going to get any better, especially as we age. And just taking hormones on top of a hormone imbalance isn't going to sort out the problem.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Joe. And I think this is going to be our final one. So you mentioned Joe, that you might be able to point people towards a template policy. What would be the best way for them to get in touch with you about that?
Either through yourself or Anne, or directly. I can share the link with Anne and Catherine. So Catherine, okay. What do you think is the best way to?
Yeah, well, if you're interested in that, you can just if you write policy in the questions box and you send it to me, Joe, I can share that out after this call. And then otherwise, if you want to find Joe, she's easily findable, Joe Fuller at the Merry Menopause on LinkedIn and your own website. You're very visible online, which is great. That makes it easy to find you.
I'm yellow.
Yes, yeah, very yellow.
For a reason.
it works. Cool. So I think that's actually got to the end of our questions. Thank you, Joe and Anne, for building them so expertly and covering so many. That's really helpful. Just a reminder, this whole webinar has been recorded, and the recording will be emailed to you later today. If you wanted a free trial of Marshall's menopause course, you just need to type free into the questions box and we'll get back to you. If you wanted the policy template, type policy and I will send that out to you later today after Joe shared it with me. And when this webinar finishes, there will be a little exit survey just asking you for some feedback. We really appreciate it if you could fill that in. It helps us improve it for next time. All that is left for me to say is thank you, Joe and Anne. I really enjoyed that. I learned a lot. I think everybody learned a lot. Great way to form a part of our celebrations of World Menopause Day tomorrow. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you everybody for being so attentive and engaged with our questions and with the slides. I really appreciate it. And we hope that you can join us again for another Ciphr and Marshall's webinar soon. Take care. Have a great day. Bye everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.